I really recommend switching over to these. It just will save more connectors than you realize. What in the RFI is this? Oh, Aliexpress, you disappoint. How's it going, hams and hams to be? Lucas W1BTR here. I love buying shit. I also love ham radio. So when I combine these two things, I love buying ham radio stuff. Ham radio accessories, antennas, radios, you name it. However, I have a bit of a problem. Most of my money is invested in all-in-one boards, which you can buy on W1BTR.com. But, so that means that I'm limited in what I can spend before my wife kicks me out of the house. So, I love going on cheap websites, Alibaba, eBay, Aliexpress, and seeing what options they have. But as you might have seen on these websites, a lot of that stuff is kind of, well, junk. So, today we're going to take a look at a bunch of Aliexpress ham radio accessories and see if they're QSL, which means they're coming in great, they're awesome, or they're QRM. They're just noise out in the field, they're junk, basically means you shouldn't buy it. So come with me on this journey, we're going to take a look at all these accessories and see if they are QSL or QRM. Alright, starting off with this 8-in-1 programming cable. So it's got USB in one end, goes into this little piece here, and then we've got 8 individual types of programming cables, and this is quite the list of supported radios, just $7.78. This seems like a pretty good deal. Interestingly, it looks like the listing has it as a Jiker cable. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, but that's a brand name that I've seen for accessories before, but nowhere on this actual chip does it have that brand name. So is it a knockoff? Is it the same thing? I actually have one of the official Jiker ones that we paid, I think, about $30 for at work. And other than the labels, it honestly seems exactly the same. So my guess is same factory, but just not branded. Quick add-on, I brought my other one home from work. This is the one we got in Aliexpress. This here is the one from Jiker. You can see the label's a bit different, but the actual unit looks pretty much the same. If we look on the official name brand one, USB port looks the same, label looks the same, except this one says Jiker. This one's $30, this one's $8. I like the $8 one, honestly. Probably the same factory, cables look the same length, everything looks exactly identical. Alright, real quick, I just wanted to mention how we set up the drivers for this device. If you go into your device manager here, or in my case mine, this is the 8-in-1 programming thing here. You can see it's USB enhanced serial CH343. It is a CH343 serial emulation chip. Now, if you're having issues getting this driver, first off, it does come with one on a DVD, but I typically like to find drivers from the original source. It's kind of like a program. You don't want to install it from who knows where, with who knows what intentions. So this is actually a readily available driver. It does support Windows 11, unlike some of the prolific ones. So it's actually kind of a breeze to install. If we go over here to Google, I'm just going to type in CH343 driver serial enhanced. You know, any combination there. You're going to see WCHIC.com. That's the official source. And if we scroll down here, there is the download right there for the drivers. And you can see this one right here, CH343. You can install that. It'll work on Windows 11, 10, 8.1, 8, 7, Vista XP, all the way down to Windows 2000. If you're using any of these, please update your computer to a newer version of Windows because they do not get security updates anymore. Anyways, that's how you can install the driver for the 8-in-1 programming cable. And this is the same whether you're using the official Jiker one or the quote-unquote knockoff one, which I think is from the same factory. One more note here on this programming cable is that if you're wondering which one to use, you can see on the description it says which is supported here. So for example, for the IC208E, you're going to use the I cable. Does that make sense? Yeah. Right over here. All in all, I'd say the, well, it's not actually a Jiker, but the 8-in-1 programming cable gets a QSL for me. Definitely a good value, you know. I mean, it makes sense because most of the costs in these pieces are the little serial emulation chip that's in here. whereas these guys are, 5 cents each. So it makes sense to combine them and cut down the cost. But even that, for $7, that's about the price I'd expect to pay for one of these for pretty cheap. But driver is pretty easy to find, and it works. QSL. This next item is a BNC SMA adapter. More specifically, a strain relief adapter. But what is it for? Well, here we've got a Quenchang UVK5. You'll notice it has a male SMA connector in there. It's male because it has a little pin there that goes inside of here. Now this screws on right onto there. I'm looking through the camera, so I can't see it. There we go. Now we're going to screw this in nice and tight. And what it's going to do, I have a second one here, is you can see that the connector has a flat piece right here. This is designed to fit right into there, just like the antenna would, but with more pressure on the actual piece there. So when you wiggle this back and forth, the strain is on the plastic casing instead of the strain being on the connector. So we can now get a BNC antenna like this one, fit it right on there, and now the strain is on the plastic housing instead of on the connector. So you're less likely to have that scratchy signal cutting in and out. You're less likely to have that connector snap off altogether. That's not just an issue with the Quantum, this is an issue with all the radios that have this connector for the most part, where that connector can break fairly easily. It's also really useful if you're hooking it up to a coax feed, like if you're using it in a car, or if you want to use it with an external antenna, or if you're hooking it up to, a base station antenna or something like that. A lot better of a connection to have with the coax than this is there. Now, speaking of SMA connections, the Baofeng UV5R, which also uses that, you notice this little screw-on piece that holds the connector rigid on there. Now, a lot of radios have that. In fact, on the GA510s, it tends to unscrew itself a little bit sometimes. But it's kind of a pain to tighten on there, or loosen if you needed to loosen it. You gotta get a pair of needle nose pliers in there, or some sort of a special tool. But did you know that Baofeng actually sends you a tool that can do just that? It's not in the box. It's not something you buy separately. In fact, if we go just like this, take the cap off the potentiometer for the volume, you notice those 4 little pegs on the outside? Those happen to be just right to fit onto there, and let us loosen that or tighten it. What a clever little thought for them to include that, huh? But these little connectors here come in clutch. You can get them on Amazon as well as Aliexpress, but 99 cents is great. I really recommend switching over to these if you're in a position where your antennas are getting whacked frequently, or if you're using it with a feed line. It just will save more connectors than you realize. So this gets QSL from me. Speaking of handheld radios, this is the, what is it called? Car Suction Cup Walkie-Talkie Holder. So this looks like the brand name is Unibitst. The idea is it suctions on your dashboard, and then the radio clip slots right into here, and it holds your radio up for you, so that you can have it in the dash of your car. If you don't have a mobile, or you don't want to put a mobile in your car, then this is a great way to just get it in a good place where the antenna is going to stay straight up. You can see the screen, you can work with it. It's actually a lot better construction than I was expecting looking at it online. This is like some good plastic, pretty strong. This is actually adjustable, so you can change what height you want it at. And even with like a thick radio, I would not be worried about the weight bending that. The suction cup is a good one too. It's one of these types that you can wash if it gets anything on it, but it's a bit more sucky than normal. Obviously there's a protective sheath on it, and then you can kind of just adjust this for that. There's a piece of foam in there as well to hold the clip. It came with another piece of foam as well in case you've got a really small clip. That way you can have a better tight slit for it. Let's test it in the car. Alright, so we've got the GA510 on the mount here. I've got it so it's kind of resting on the mount. I don't know if it needs to be, but I think this looks good as far as it. I'll take this peel off. Just dust it off the dash, and I'm gonna just stick it right on here. And we'll see if it stays on. Now, one thing I did note that the antenna hits the glass pretty easily, so you gotta make sure your dash doesn't clear it, or use a stubby one like this. I was thinking you could also put it upside down, put it on the windshield. But yeah, we'll see if this stays on here for this this trip here. Actually, what I forgot to do is this. I should be putting it on this and then use this suction cup. There we go. All right, I will report back. All right, so it's been a pretty warm day. It's been out in the sun. Been driving around and it's still pretty good on there. I think it helps that the weight is pretty balanced on it. It's not like some of the old GPSs that would come off all the time because it was unbalanced. So I think this game gets a good thumbs up for me. I think it's QSL. All right, this guy is the 2025 new, it wasn't called that when I bought the listing, QRP Z-Match Manual Antenna Tuner, 3 to 28 megahertz. Warning, this item is not for resale if the seal is broken. Well, we don't love that, but this thing claims to be a QRP tuner that supports from 3 to 28 megahertz, so that's from the 80 meter to the 10 meter band. 25 to 2500 ohms, pretty good. Tune maximum power input, so keep in mind that if you are having this set to tune mode, you're going to want the maximum input power to be 5 watts. And then the operate power maximum is 10 watts PEP. We've got the radio input here, we've got the antenna input here, or output, and you can switch between low and high impedance. For my testing today, I'll probably have it set to high for the most part, because I'm going to test it with a compromise NFED. Oh, good, it passed QC, good to see, good to see. All right. We've got our antenna, which is a QRP 1 NFED antenna with this random chunk of wire. Goes out here all the way tied onto that knob over there. So not in any way ideal, but that's kind of the idea. So we've got the Z-Match tuner here set up and ready to go with my kind of compromise antenna there. So I'm on the 7 meter band, sorry, the 40 meter band, 7 megahertz tonight because it is, well, nighttime. And here we have the Z-Match tuner hooked up. So the way this little LED is supposed to work is it gets brighter when there's more SWR because it's kind of feeding off the power that's being reflected. So that makes sense. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into CW mode. Alright, so we've got my CW key here. So remember it says in the top here that the maximum tuning power input is 5 watts. We've got our power set to 5% here because this is a 100 watt radio. You have to calculate that for your own radio. And start out with an ID here so that we're fine to test. Alright, so you can see that light is pretty bright. I shouldn't really be using a iambic for this, but let's see if we can get this any darker here. Not looking like much darker. Oh, it's a little bit darker right here. It's getting a little bit lower right there. Let's pause for a second. I don't want to overheat the thing at 5 watts. Definitely brighter. It's definitely darker right around here. Alright, let's see what our actual SWR is down here on the scope. Kinda high. Actually, light is still pulsing just a little bit right there, which I find interesting. But 2. So it did something, but it doesn't seem to like this low. Okay, this seems to turn it down a bit. I'm watching it on here instead of on the LED here. I seem to be getting it down a little bit lower right around there. What does it look like on here? Still looks just as bright, so that's interesting. What if we go up into the voice range in SSB? Picking up one station here. Again, this is a very big compromise antenna. It's inside of an apartment complex. And it's not the right length, right? But what I want to see is if I disconnect this, hook it up to the internal tuner, does it do significantly better? Huh, it just gives up instantly. That's interesting. Now, if I set it into emergency mode, emergency mode is on, right? Nope, nope, it isn't. Ah, there we go. I had to hit that. Alright, so now if I hit tune... Nope, still gives up. So it's definitely got its work cut out for it. So that being said, I think this tuner is doing a pretty good job. Yeah, see, once I have the tuner in place too, it actually does its work. That's how it should sound when it's actually tuning. And see how that light stays on for the tuner? It's hard to see because it's like really high brightness. It says E-tune because emergency mode is on. So we've got tons of noise here on 20 meters, but we can at least see how she tunes up. So let's give it a try. In this case, I'm just going to use FM. Seems better. Seems good about there. What are we measuring on here? Let's see. Meter. Not much. It's down to 0 on there. Again, the tuner is off as of right now. I'll bring it up to like 10 watts. Oh, right. It's going to show low SWR because it's in tune mode. My bad. Yeah, we're at about 2. W1BTR, just testing. So yeah, we're about 2 to 1 SWR here. Enough that the internal tuner could bring it down to 1. Can we get it any better here? Let's see. Oh. Looks pretty good right around there. Does this bring it down at all? Yeah, it does, interestingly. So I think the LED just doesn't quite have full accuracy here, because we're at a flat SWR now. Here at 10 watts, we're at a flat SWR. Of course, I'm doing this in the CW band. I shouldn't be doing that. Let's move up a bit. How are we over here? We're at a little bit higher, but not by much. See if we can't get it a little bit lower. Yeah, look at that. So yeah, same finding here on 20 meters, where the LED lies to you. If we set it to tune mode here, let's turn on the power to 5 watts, set it to tune. It is bright, but we are getting some pretty good SWR here, so I think the LED just isn't very accurate. It helps, it gets us pretty close, but you can get it better without the LED on. So if you've got an internal SWR meter, or you've got an external one, or nano VNA, that'll help a lot. Alright, now that we've tested it out, what do you say we crack it up inside? Grab, what is this? This is a H2, a size 2 hex bit. Well, sorry guys, but I'm not gonna be able to sell this one anymore. What's this? An all-in-one board from W1BTR.com? Stuck inside? Imagine that! Editing magic aside, looks like a pretty simple system we've got here. You can see the 2 tuning capacitors. We've got some resistors here. You can see how these are soldered on. You can see our little LED right there with a diode. This matches pretty much the schematic they have posted online. Seems like the ferroid is pretty well wound. And I'm not sure if you can see here, but I'm pretty happy with these solder joints. You know, with modern lead free solder, shiny doesn't, you know, if it's dull it doesn't always mean it's a bad solder, but this is probably leaded solder because it is shiny. It looks good, but that helps us be able to do a quick visual test to see if they did a good job, and I'd say it looks like they did. I'm assuming these are all soldered on the bottom because I see no solder on the top for these components, but they're well grounded in there, so yeah, I'm pretty happy with what I see. So we've got this guy buttoned back up, and all in all, I think this thing gets a QSL from me. For 20 bucks, it's a neat little package. LED light doesn't seem to be too helpful, but it'll get you close. I'm not sure exactly what this is all about. I don't know what they're worried about you seeing inside, considering the schematic is, you know, public, but maybe it's just for internal use. And yeah, other than that, I have no real complaints other than the LED. So, QSL. Next up to look at is this. This is a RA1728A. It's a 0 to -82 decibel RF attenuator. So if you're not familiar with an RF attenuator, so measuring radio power, you can measure it in watts, you can also measure it in decibels. Now decibels are neat because every 3 decibels is halving it, every 10 is a magnitude of 10. So for example, if you were to have a 100 watt signal going in, and you were attenuating it by 10 decibels, it would be 10 watts. Now this thing can only handle, let's see, I don't remember how much the max power is according to the specifications. It doesn't actually say on the listing how much power it can take in, but it seemed like it was good for a handheld per some reviews. Now, if you're not familiar with what the benefit of an attenuator is, like I said, you can turn the power down basically. So, you can turn these switches on, and these attenuators will stack their power reduction capabilities. And you could take, for example, if I was to be measuring a 5-watt handheld transmitter with, say, a nano SA, or tiny SA, what it's actually called, a spectrum analyzer. If I was to be transmitting that right into the SA with a cable, that would be too much power, and it would toast it, it would break it, because I just can't handle that much power. So if I was to attenuate it down to a safe level, then I can measure it without having it not be connected directly. It's just basically absorbing some of the power, usually into resistors that are 50 ohms. So this looked attractive to me because it's only $23.43 right now on Aliexpress, and normally what you do is you get little inline attenuators that you screw in, and those do work well, but the price can add up if you're getting different amounts, and this seemed like a great way to be able to adjust exactly how much I wanted. It's got a UHF connector on each end, PL259 connector. Looks like the frequency range, when I bought it, it said it was good for UHF. It looks like they're saying up to VHF now. On the specifications, it says up to 250 megahertz. So that's interesting. But it is made out of metal, like it says, which is good as far as RF. But let's take a look inside to see how it looks before we test it out, to make sure it doesn't look too terrible. And we'll try it out. Okay, we removed the 6 screws here. And now I believe this should, let's see, does it? Aha! Here we go. Alright. What in the RFI is this? That is interesting. Okay, so I see what they're going for here. So the signal, the switch is a two-way switch, so the middle is the input. You can see it's not bridged between these two ends, and it can go one way. If the switch is off, it goes right through, and if it's on, it goes to these 50 ohm resistors to ground at different levels. And then the more you turn on, the more resistors it's going through to ground. So basically what that means is that since it's a resistor, not all the power will go through, only some of it will, and it will go to ground, so it's effectively going away. So the power that goes through, continuing on, after it goes to this circuit, is reduced because some of the power went to this ground line here. But this is not what you want to see when you're working. Like if this was just standard voltage, then sure. But this is an RF attenuator, and there is no isolation here. I don't think these are RF rated switches or resistors. I mean, there's no power listing on there because I don't think these could take more than like a watt or two. This does not inspire confidence at all. The soldering job looks okay, but that's really not the point. Oh, Aliexpress, you disappoint. We're just gonna put this cover back on, cover up this. Yeah, I don't even want to plug this into my tiny SA because I'm fairly confident I'm going to destroy it. So I'm just going to say this one is a QRM. We're going to give that one a thumbs down. Alright, this next item here is called the new repeater box for Baofeng TYT Waxin Hurisun HYT walkie-talkie bidirectional radio UVVU crossband K-plug DIY repeater. Okay, crazy name aside, this allows you to take 2 handheld radios and turn it into a repeater. However, it is designed specifically to be a crossband repeater. That's not a limitation of this, that is actually a limitation of RF as a whole. If you've got two handhelds next to each other and they're both transmitting in the same band, you're not going to be able to hear over the other one. We talked about that with a recent video on the Watson KG M70. Check that out up here if you want to learn more about how crossband repeat works. But this is a great way to do a lower power and cheaper option with just some handhelds. This will plug into anything that takes the K-style plug, the Kenwood style plug, whether it's UV5R, GA510, any type of radio like that. There's 1,000 radios that take this. Even some of the more commercial style Kenwood radios take these plugs, and those would be great because they have pretty good selectivity and sensitivity. Excuse me. It goes into a RJ45 plug here. The idea is that when one radio is receiving, it transmits on the other one on a different band. So you can turn it into a little low power repeater that you can power with something like this right here. This, if I open this up here, is a 12 volt to 7.5 volts step down converter. I need a knife to open this. This is also an Aliexpress purchase. I'm not going to give it a separate review because this is not really a hand radio item, but it is useful for hand radio in this case because what you can do with this is you can hook it up to a 12 volt battery or power supply, and then on this end hook it up to the battery input pins on a handheld radio and power it off of a big battery, which can be nice. You can power a couple of them this way and get some good long lifetime out of it because this is pretty efficient. Handhelds are pretty efficient, and on a big LiPo battery you could get quite a long runtime. So some cool things here: it lights up when it's receiving and transmitting on each one, and it does work in both directions, assuming that you don't have interference issues that way. It will work in both directions. What I do recommend is if you're to do two radios, you can get what's called a diplexer, sometimes called a duplexer. But what happens is it has an input and it splits it between VHF and UHF. Well, you could also do, say, VHF and 800 megahertz, UHF and 800 megahertz, VHF and 220 might be too close, but 220, 800, etc. You can do whatever you want with it as long as you have the proper isolation between the bands. But you can create your own little mountaintop repeater, or your own little camping repeater, or your own little car repeater, whatever you want to do, just for a quick temporary setup, or even a more permanent one. And one thing I want to note here is you might think that, Lucas, why would you want to use a handheld as a repeater? That's going to be so low power. But if you think about it this way, are you talking to it from handhelds? Because a lot of the issues, or one issue that you can have with repeaters is that if your handhelds are transmitting at 5 watts and the repeater is transmitting at 25 watts, you've got a difference there in the sense that you're going to be able to hear the repeater longer than it's going to be able to hear you. So if you want to talk both ways, you're limited by the lowest power item. So that's going to be your handheld in that case. So you don't necessarily need that high power. It can be nice to be able to reach further. It's especially nice if you're talking with mobiles. But for a brief little trip where you're, hiking and backpacking or whatever, this is a great little option to create a repeater. So trying out this crossband repeater here, we got this on 146.51 and this one on 435 megahertz. And I've got this listening on, 435.9. I got this one listening on 435.9, this one transmitting on 146.51. Let's see if it works. W1BTR radio service test, 1, 2, 3. Definitely works. I don't think the lights are lighting up though, are they? Service test, 1, 2. Oh, they are. Cool. W1BTR clear. Let's see if we can't maybe try and... Oh, I hear a rattle. That might not be good. Yep. What's rattling? Oh, it looks like there was screws just underneath the sticker. Oh, that's cool. Alright, so yeah, there's more going on here than something basic, so that's good, because you can make your own DIY cable. The issue is that the audio has no isolation. So you see these two transformers here? Transformers have numerous uses. They can bring up and down voltage. But you can also use it to isolate audio, right? If it's a toroid winding, which it looks like there is a little toroid in there, it can be used to transfer audio without a direct connection, which is great because you're going to keep out that RFI. You might still get some from the ground connection stuff. You're still going to have to be careful and use probably not the cheapest radios possible, but there's a lot of isolation here that you have capacitors that add probably some more regulation as far as the audio level and stuff. And then for the LEDs as well, those are also going to power that off of the, if the radio has it. There's a standard that lets you, with those K-style plugs, one of the pins also has a voltage to show whether the radio is receiving or transmitting. So it's going to use that to detect that on these two sides. So yeah, actually, don't mind the appearance of the build quality here. You can see that the solder joints look pretty good too. As I mentioned in another item, it's hard to tell on these products these days because if they use lead-free solder, it'll look kind of dull. It won't look shiny. But since they're using leaded solder, we can see that shiny gloss, which shows that they did a good job on that. It's well heated. Doesn't look really cheaply made, which I appreciate, considering that this cost only $6.84. And if you get this, if you're a new sign up on Aliexpress, you can get it for 99 cents right now. So that's pretty cool. It's a welcome deal, right? So I'll have to take that screw out and glue this back together. But yeah, not as cheap inside as I expected it to be. And it's pretty cool too, because you could make your own plug if you had a different style connector with just a Cat5 cable by looking at what this is wired up to. Pro tip, if you want to figure out how it's wired without having to cut this, you can push a multimeter pin into each of these pins and then check and see which of these it's going to. It's a great way to reverse engineer it. But yeah, I think this is super cool for the price. It seems well designed. I think that making your own, even without any isolation, is going to take more than $6 worth of your time to make it. So this gets a solid QSL from me. Speaking of diplexers and duplexers and repeating, this here is a 20-watt UHF duplexer. It's called the Max Geek. It is 400 to 470 megahertz. It's only $41.04. I like the fours used with a UHF 400 megahertz duplexer here. But so again, a duplexer is used. You can have one antenna. You can send one low pass to your repeater's transmit side and one to the receive side, and that gives it proper isolation. What's really cool is you don't have to tune this yourself. When you buy it, you tell them what frequency you want, and they tune it. And what I did is I went ahead and brought this back to the shop and looked at how they had it tuned. You can see that on screen here, and it was tuned pretty well. I asked for it with this frequency range, 446.5 as the high pass, and 441.45 as the low pass. I tried tuning it to see if I could get it any better as well, just to see if they were slacking, right? And I couldn't get it any better. Part of that's because this is a tiny little unit. It's a compromised kind of duplexer. So with a professional grade one, you know, like you'd see with the Telewave, or a TXRX professional grade duplexer for higher power levels. But it's enough that I wouldn't worry too much about it. You can see we only got 77.4 decibels of isolation from the high frequency on the low pass, and 70 on the high pass there. But we only lost 1 decibel, negative 1 decibel for the pass, which is pretty good. You don't need to know what all that means. Basically, it's, you know, about another 10 decibels, another 100 times or so worse than some of the professional ones, but it's still well high enough that it's going to do well at that 20 watt that it's rated at. I'd probably put it at 10 watts and I think you'd be just fine. But one thing we did notice is that the paint was chipping off a ton. It looked like a little bit someone had, you know, cracked a pepper grinder over our testing set as we were doing this before we stuck the sticker on here, and it was kind of peeling everywhere. But connectors seem pretty good. The construction is good. It's heavy, and I made sure to put it in the car for a while to see if it detuned itself, and it didn't seem to with these washers tightened down. So for 40 watts, I didn't even know you could get something like that at that price range. So I'm pretty happy with this. This gets a QSL for me as well. Alright, our next item here is I was interested in this thing. This is a universal USB charger for, well, it says for Baofeng radios, but I would assume it would work on any 3.3 volts radio. Interesting. This looks like some custom construction here. Alright. So this is it here. So the idea is you plug this into a USB port, and then you clamp these down onto the actual battery charging pins itself. Interesting. How much did this set me back? This one was $3.99. 7.1 volt, not 3.3 volt. Most radios run on 7 volts. This battery here for a GA510, that is dead. If we try and turn it on. Oh no, actually it does have a charge. I lied. Alright, so I got this Baofeng radio here with a dead battery. I just tried it and it didn't work. This guy have a dead battery? Does this guy have a dead battery? No. swear you all had dead batteries. You don't have a dead battery. What in the is going on here? Do you have a dead battery? Yes. Alright, so we've got this bad thing here with a dead battery. We're going to take a look here. So it looks like there is a positive pin right there that you clamp onto, and a negative clamp right here that you would clamp onto. Alright, and then we should be able to just plug it in to a USB power source, like so, and see it turn on. So I was able to charge up this handheld here and get it up to full power. You'll notice this is actually a different handheld. That's because the Baofeng that I had before I think was just busted, but the battery was low. I put it in this guy and it had about another bar left to charge. I left it on there longer, and sure enough it was filling it up at that full 7.3 volts. So definitely works. A great little thing to throw in your bag there. Something I'll keep in my bag, that's for sure. So yeah, QSL from me. So this here, if you are familiar with VHF and UHF antennas, especially if you get a mobile antenna or something like that, typically you want to install it on your roof so that it has a good ground plane. Otherwise, if you're using a magnetic mount, you can put it on like a pie pan or something like that. This is the more elegant official solution for such troubling times and challenges that provides you with a ground plane. This is a ground plane kit. I've seen these online before, I've used them before at work, but I've not seen one this cheap with a nice little UHF connector here. This set me back $7.83, and it looks like we've got a few different sizes here. We got the long ones, which I expect are for VHF, and the short ones for UHF. Now that's interesting. It says that the long ones are for UHF and the short ones are for VHF. My guess would be that that is just the assumption of someone who didn't understand radio, because the higher frequencies have shorter lengths. However, I could be totally wrong. There could be some math there that makes the short ones good for VHF and the long ones good for UHF. After all, RF is kind of black magic at a certain point. So it's just a pass-through connector, so you screw your cable into here, or your bracket top onto here. Typically you'd probably want to have this above the bracket, and then you would attach your antenna onto here. And honestly, as far as build quality goes, this feels really sturdy. For $7.41, it comes with both of these. We'll give this a test later on, but this looks really good. So here's a good test of it before on this 92.9 megahertz frequency. So as I'm screwing this antenna on here, you might be wondering why I'm using a FM broadcast station when we're going to be using this for ham radio, and that's a bit lower of a frequency. Well, for two reasons. One, if it works on that, this radio is going to work probably on VHF as well. It's not too far off. But the more important thing is that we really want this to be a test that is stable. And your average FM radio transmission on a ham radio repeater is fairly stable, but someone who's talking might be picket fencing. They might have an issue with their station. It's kind of hard to rule out what's what if it's going through a repeater. And if it's just another station, things like fading can change, lots of things can change. And this is kind of true for FM stations as well, but they're a lot more stable. They're broadcasting on a set transmission, they're at better elevation, higher power, all these things that make it so that I can trust a difference a bit more, that it hasn't just been that something else has changed by the time I've screwed this antenna back on here. Now, another little mentioning I wanted to bring up here is that, hey, it's a feature, not a bug. This part here, when you screw it down, because it's a bit wide, I don't know if you can tell, it is hitting the metal of the actual part that spins right there. And it's actually holding this better in place so it doesn't tip over. So it's actually kind of great because this isn't gonna rotate, because this is a rotating right angle adapter, and it holds it on there. So hey, it's a feature.
So I called up another Bloomberg reporter, Jonathan Randalls, who covers bankruptcy.
So as you can hear, it definitely still sounds a little bit scratchy, but we've got full bars now compared to what we had before. It's definitely a world better than it was before. That's just with the radials on there. So it does make a difference. Definitely makes a difference. QSL for me. Alright, so looking at our final results here, not bad. We had only one QRM, one really bad product. A lot of these had their own caveats, their kind of weaknesses, but really wasn't wasn't bad. Especially surprised by the duplexer and the repeater kit. Those connectors are a great price. But yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Do you want to see another one of these kind of AliExpress deals? I've been looking at some more stuff. There's some balance and things like that, and some more interesting products like that. So yeah, let me know in the comments if you want to see more of this. Be sure to leave a like. Would love if you could subscribe. It helps out a ton. But other than that, thanks so much for watching, and we will catch you on the next one. 7-3 from Lucas, W1BTR.